Am I allowed a personal story here? It takes it away a bit, but I have a daughter at university now in town here. But when she was about grade 7 or thereabouts, she lost her best friend to leukemia. And it was pretty traumatic. She was grieving pretty well and all the rest, but it was a very, very tough year for her. And I went into her bedroom several months later. She grieved well in all kinds of ways, but I went into her bed. I could hear her crying in her room. I tapped on the door, and I went in and wrapped her up in my arms and said, "Tell me about it." She burst into tears, and she said, "Daddy, God could have saved my friend, but he didn't, and I hate him." Now what do you say? Well, what I said was, look, I'm so glad you've told me, and you might as well tell me. I mean, God knows what you think in any case. No point in hiding it from him. I'd rather you tell me than not tell me. And moreover, you're not saying much more than some of the psalmists say when they're really kicked in the teeth. Or Job comes pretty close to that too. You know, you're not really saying anything too extraordinary. But before you're absolutely convinced that God's got it in for you, you have to ask yourself two questions. First, do you want a God who is just like the genie in Aladdin's lamp? Can do absolutely anything, very powerful, but ultimately completely under the control of whoever holds the lamp? Or do you want a God who's so big that sometimes he will do stuff that you don't understand, and you certainly don't control him? And the second question is, before you become too convinced that God doesn't love you, you always have to stand beside the cross. You lost your friend. God lost his son. In fact, he gave his son. The place where you find your faith stabilized as to whether or not God loves us is on a little hill outside Jerusalem, not by your best friend's bed. Now, the reason I tell you the story is because I think that a lot of the sign thing comes down to a kind of genie view of God. A domesticated God who can do wonderful things, but at the end of the day is at our beck and call. If I come to Jesus and say, as in this passage, in fact, John 6 that we were looking at today, look, you provided the food yesterday, do it today and we'll believe you. What am I really saying? What I'm really saying is that no matter how great the miracle from yesterday, unless you do it on command, on my command, to serve my interests, at my beck and call, then I disavow you. At that point, do they see it at all? Well, at one level, they do see it. They have seen it. At another level, they don't see it. They don't see the true significance, or they wouldn't say something half so daft. And the real problem is that if you start saying, go ahead, God, I'll believe you. There's this brick on the floor. Make it come up 6 feet, 6.5 feet, let's say, and hold for 30 seconds. And then on command, let it fall. And I'll believe that you really are who you say you are. Go ahead. So he does it. Will that make a Christian out of you? What it's likely to do is up the ante so that tomorrow you got to ask for something bigger. And then the next day something bigger. And sooner or later, God himself becomes a trained monkey doing tricks. And who's in charge? On the other hand, that does not mean there is no credibility-enhancing function to miracles. So, for the right person in the right place, as Thomas, unless I put my fingers in the wounds, I will not believe. Jesus appears through closed doors and says, touch me and see, and do not be faithless, but believing. In other words, in certain contexts, Jesus does provide that evidence. He provides it in the case of a Gideon. And then he withholds it in other cases precisely because he sees that what is at issue is a kind of manipulative control. That is what is going on here in John 6. He's just done something spectacular. Do they listen to him truly, therefore, and say, what is this bread of life? What is the significance? Do we bow before? This is a work of creation. What kind of allegiance should this give? No, no, no. They want to manipulate him still, which shows they do not understand at all. So in that kind of framework, then Jesus can say to people, no, 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 no. You're not going to get any sign except the sign of Jonah, who preached righteousness after coming back from the dead. And then even then, Jesus can go so far as to say in another context, even if someone came back from the dead, they will not believe. In other words, miracles can have evidentiary, faith-enhancing value. They do not guarantee any evidentiary, faith-enhancing result. And so some of Jesus' answers, it seems to me, are precisely those sorts of peculiar, nuanced things that you would get when you see how people can see and not see, or can look at evidence and twist it. It's pastorally shrewd, and it fits into a wholeness of thought only once you understand the pastoral situation in every case. Does that make sense? I think that's what's going on. Yes.